Oh, there's Jim Griffin. Welcome, Mr. Griffin. Okay, it says we are recording. Okay, so this is the meeting of the CSS Workforce Exec Committee, March 4th, 2021. Present from the board are Jack Wheeler, Tim Driscoll, Ernie Hartman, Jim Griffin, Judy McKinney-Cherry, and Mike Mishook. That is 6, so we do have quorum. As far as guests, we have myself, Dan Porter, and Phyllis Ballier. We have no that's staff, I'm sorry, we have no guests. So that all being said, you are good to go with the first item, Jack, which is call to order, attendance, roll call, and conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. So like always, if anything comes up that you or your organization has a conflict with, please note that. If not, could I get a approval of minutes of the last exec meeting, please?
February 4th, I have it on my screen.
This is Judy, so moved.
Ernie, second.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, Dan,
Okay.
your show.
All right, so got these first two items on the director report, which is the budget and the 2020 budget update. I'm going to use a single document to tie them all together so you can see how. Make sure I can, that should be big enough that everyone can see it. So a couple of things have happened since July 1st of our program year. We did get a small amount of emergency grant funds out of Washington, and our share of those funds was about $39,000. Actually, I take that back, $36,141.33. In addition to that, we do have, that's this number right here. So this is how I calculate our revenue. So this is our revenue. Calculates our carry-in, these two lines here last year, which gives us these dollars here. So we started the year having to spend that much, or we have to give it back. This is our new money this year, in which we have to spend at least 80% of that money. And this is our the new monies that we got in. So you look at grand total money. So if we spent every penny that we had available to us, you see that represented on this line here. We have about $2,053,000 available to us. Every year we set a target expenditure goal. Depends upon the year. We've kind of settled in from a staff perspective, an 82% recommendation. That hits our 80% and gives us a smidgen of a cushion in case somebody comes a couple dollars under. But we target an 82%. So when you carry that down, here's each of our streams, which gives us a total expenditure goal of about just under $1.8 million to spend this year. So that's the revenue side, the calculations on that. I then carry that into our budget. So if you look down here on the bottom, you see that number, that $2,050,000 again. That becomes, we always budget, we set our budget at spending 100% of our available funds, but then we set a target goal over here. That's why we have both the approved budget and then the miniature expenditure columns, the two gray columns on either side of our budget. We track over here to make sure we hit our minimum expenditure. So you see that, I'm sorry, we're in Adobe, it doesn't do it quite as smooth. You see the $1.792 million again as well. So revenues have changed, and so we're kind of planning out the rest of the year. For the purposes of the January expenditures, however, these columns in the center here, they really do represent the January expenditures and the stat where we're at against current budget. So we can kind of go through those expenditures and then cycle back to really, which is this draft column, which is kind of do a budget mod to accommodate and close out the year close to where I think we're going to be. So starting with expenditures, again, these columns here, all right. This year we have expended about $350,000 of our personnel line, which represents about 46% of our available budget on that line. This is through the end of January, which was 58.33% of the way through the year. So we're a little bit behind there. If you look at the sub breakouts, we're a little behind on salary. It appears to be quite a bit behind on fringes. But remember, spring is our heavy fringe season. That's when all of our health insurances and HSAs and all those unemployment and our main unemployment renews, and so that will rapidly catch up. If you remember, last month or the month before, we were down in like the 20% or 24% or something. So you see it accelerating, and by June 30th, I'm very confident we're going to come back into line. We are, however, going to come in under our minimum expenditure goal of 609, which I don't see to be a huge problem, because history is if we don't spend it here, we push it down to this bottom column. And when you see what we talked about, the ending budget amendment to close out the year, you'll see kind of how that plays out. Looking at, I don't know why this is not letting me highlight. Looking at this operating expenditures, this very large column here, we have worked to move all of our expenditures and break out and added a couple of lines. So we've added in storage rental. You see that highlighted here. We've also moved and measured our rent and utilities and janitorial line and things like that. And so you see numbers being populated down here in this line, the Corning space line right here above the total one-stop cost. You see number expenses populating in there. That represents, remember I've told you we needed to measure out that area that's dedicated to youth and then pull out those proportional shares. So that's been done. So these expenditures, when you look at it, we are obligated and expended and planning to do about 17,286 on rent, which is 96%. So we're in good shape there. Utilities we can't obligate, but Patty's and we're comfortable that we're going to come in line on the 40%, 28s. The storage rental, at this point, we don't have any money on that in our PY20 approved budget. So you see no percentages over there, but we'll need to change that. Professional services, that would be our audits, lawyers, etc. We're obligated out to about 86%. We've got a little bit left in there, which is good, because one of the items further down in today's agenda is I'm going to want to talk about engaging a lawyer on an item. Staff training and development, we spent about $1,200 this year. We may have a couple of small trainings that will kind of tie that up. Staff travel, we've only spent less than $800 on staff travel. The beauty of the teams and the distance and the remote work is that we're saving a ton of money on staff travel. So we'll move some of those dollars out. Dues membership, if you look, all of our dues and memberships for the year are in. If you look, we're a touch over budget at about 7,000 compared to 6,250. Reasoning is somehow we missed paying, and so you see a double payment in our expenditures on this line to the New York State Economic Development Council, that we're a member of that organization. We missed it last year, so we're a little over this year. Outreach, it looks like we're way under, but we've got some plans around outreach coming up, including the regional job fair, virtual job fair. So I'm going to recommend that we keep all that money in there. Postage is way down. Supplies are down, and actually, if you see below that, you see the line COVID supplies, 55,319. So we've begun moving those COVID supplies out of regular office supplies. Equipment and maintenance is a little bit high. We did buy some cubicle dividers to give some actual space, or some actual dividers between desks. With COVID and stuff in the admin office, having those barriers seemed prudent. Insurances are done for the year. We're at 100%. So bottom line, we're projecting about 73% of obligated and expended so far through 58% of the year, which I'm pretty comfortable we're on task with in that category. One-stop expenses, we are not spending nearly as much money obviously in our one-stops. We don't have the traffic in there. Rent and things like that still come due, but as far as office supplies and wear and tear and equipment maintenance and all those types of things are just not being expended. So we're going to come noticeably underspent there. And then down in pro expenditures, we're ramping up for the youth operation training, the main youth NIATEP training conference. Work experiences in the youth program, they've spent about $151,000 so far this year on work experiences. The contractors coming in online. We've obligated about $190,000 of OJT and customized grants this year, obligated and spent. So we're pretty pleased on that. And we've actually just got a couple of new bigger ones. So there'll be some money. Tot, we moved out down into ITAs. Supportive services, I think I've said this a couple of times. This is a bumper year for supportive services, nearly 15,000 so far. Mileage for reimbursement for program recipients is way down because most of the classes are virtual. And tuition, the tuition crew, the tuition review team, the ITA review team has done a really good job of lining up funds on that front. It looks like we're a little bit heavy. We kind of are, except that this time of the year, there's not a huge, traditionally speaking anyways, there's not a huge number of training offerings, plus the financial aid hasn't worked through. So we're not necessarily going to spend all the money that we've spent, in particular the people that we send to Corning Community College, because once their FAFSA comes in and stuff like that, WIOA is what they call the payer of last resort. So after all the financial aid is done, then WIOA comes in. So I'm not uncomfortable with that number there, particularly when we're going to beef up expenditures on it, or beef up and move some additional monies in that group. So if you look how we're looking against budget right now, we're 58% of the way through the year, 65% overall. So I would gauge that we're really in pretty good place for budgets for the month. So my thought would be that maybe do some questions and understand expenditures for the month, and then maybe do a brief conversation on how we'll move subcategories around in the improved budget, unless someone would prefer to just go straight to that step. Anyone with questions?
Nope, no questions here.
Okay, all right. So looking between, we're going to focus now looking between the first two gray columns here outside, the approved budget and then what I've labeled as a draft budget. To close out the year, I think what I'm recommending is that we amend from the PY20 approved to the draft. So right now I'm not recommending the shifting of any money personnel line and the salary line, even though I did tell you we are going to come in under a little bit there. I'd rather use that as a little bit. I'd rather have some flexibility there to kind of close out the year. In particular, youth spending, they may want to bring in some temporary folks to help close out the year with expenditures, as well as a big push that they're planning on doing for enrollment purposes to meet some of their goals that the O&O committee has assigned to them. So I'd rather keep that unchanged. Going down into other area, item by item, with the moving of the monies out down into the Corning, really 18,000 is a solid number. The same with utilities. Janitorial, in the new space, we only have 1 or 2 staff in there on any given day, and so those staff have been kind of emptying their own waste baskets. So we don't have a lot of janitorial other than supplies that they're using. We do need to take and put a little bit of money in the storage rental line. We're guesstimating about a $27.50 there. I'm recommending the adjustment for board-related expenses and board training to $100 each. We've not spent any money there. I could technically go to 0, but usually for me, if you see $100 in a line, that kind of means a placeholder type of mentality there. Professional services, I think we can drop that from 19.5 to about 17.5. I do want to chat with a lawyer, but I think at 17.5 with current expenditures around 16.7, I think we should be able to get a quick lawyer's answer for $800 on my question. Staff training and development, I'd like to keep that at 2. Staff travel, I think we can take a big whack there, go from 17,000 to 1,500. Dues membership, we should probably bump up to cover the 1 year of the EDC to make sure we come in there. Outreach, as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to remain the same. Cell phone is an area where, with all of our staff working remotely, we had been putting staff cell phone into other programs or equipment maintenance and things. I'd like to kind of pull that out. Cell phones do cost a fair amount when you've got 15 staff people all communicating via cell phone and whatnot, and having to use their phones sometimes as Wi-Fi hotspots and things. Cell phone has become kind of a big ticket. So some of the saving from staff travel is going to get absorbed into that cell phone. Postage can take a modest drop. Supplies can take a drop, although we do need to move some of that into the COVID supply line that you can see there. We do need a little bit more in equipment and maintenance, insurance level, and then move to placeholder status. GMS services as our services for our payroll accounting software. so we can cut that about in half. And then payroll services, we've begun using the paycheck system to track within changes in their sick leave and having to report the sick leave balances within 3 days and so on and so forth. We've actually been using our paychecks system to track a lot of that more, and so we had to buy some additional modules in that line. So all told, originally in this subcategory, we had budgeted 132,450. I think we can comfortably go to 127,6 and still target about 116,8 within that subcategory and close out the year nicely. Down in one-stop expenses, with the exception of Montour Falls, all of the centers can realize some pretty significant savings. Montour's facility, there's not a huge amount of savings there. I mean, the county charges what the county charges, and we have to use their phone system, so they charge what they need on the phone system. So, and we've never had a huge flow of traffic in Montour, so it's not like there's a lot of money built into paper and pens and pencils. So there's not a lot of money to save in Montour. I mean, 20,000 becomes kind of a baseline for them.
Yeah. So Dan, just so you know, I shared the same situation. I reside in a county building. I pay the internet charge. I pay the telephone charges on top of my rent. So same thing.
Yep.
I feel your pain. Yeah.
I have found it very challenging to negotiate with Tim O'Hearn. So I don't see us moving there. So bottom line, though, if you look at the category of one-stop expenses, you see we had been planning to budget about 125. I think we've got about almost $30,000 that we can free up in that subcategory. If you go down to program expenditures, this is where you're going to see a big jump. So if you look I'll spoil the ending. We had originally proposed about $735,000 of direct program expenditures on participants, and I'm recommending we bump that up over $1 million. So we're going to trim a little bit out of the operator training, but the work experience, this used to be tied up in the salary line up at the very top, and what I've asked, and we've set structures up to pull it out so that everyone can see how much money we're actually putting into gross wages for our youth program. So we've spent about 150 now. I'd like us to move that to a 250 to close out the year. Contracted services, the contract stays the same. I would like to put some more money into OJT and customized because I think we can spend it there. Targeted occupational, as we're not running that this between now and June, I've bumped that down into the ITA line. Supportive services, I'm really gung-ho and thinking we can hit this $25,000 expenditure. Mileage, I'm giving up the ghost on, so we can trim that. But then the tuition and ITA line bumps up from 85 to about 191, which puts a burden. So basically, we've taken all the money above and we scrubbed it, and then we dump it down into this pot down here. And where you're going to see additional monies go out the door is, again, a big jump up in the work experiences for the youth program. So direct wages on young people, OJT and customized trainings. I've already given Kelly a little bit of agita by letting her know I was recommending this. And then the ITA group, Phyllis has equal agita with the ITA group, trying to find enough places to spend off another $80,000, $90,000 between now and June. So that's my recommendation. June expenditures, I'm not unhappy with everything. I think it's progressing nicely. I think to close out the year, to recognize the new revenues and kind of give direction as to where to spend it, my recommendation would be to go from this PY to that draft column. I'm sure I'll have lots of questions on at this point, so please.
Questions for Dan?
Hey, Dan, this is Jim. Have you made any progress at all with working with Alstom and their training needs that are coming up? We talked about that a month or so ago, about having a meeting to see about all of the needs that they're going to have are going to start coming fairly quickly. And you were going to have a meeting with John and probably maybe myself and some other people with their HR people to see what it is that we can do to set up some training courses with BOCES and Alfred State College and so on. I mean, it's hanging out there, and we expect any time to get that award. Almost on a daily basis, we expect it. So when that happens, it'll happen in a hurry, and I want to make sure that we're ready for it.
So I might have had two conversations, but I know I had one at least lengthy one with John Reese over there about this topic. And there's two things going on there. A, we've got some resources and supports that we can certainly help and bring to the table, but they also won a CFA award for it's escaping me right now. I want to say about $100,000 of OJT money. So they are going to have their own resources, plus they're going to have some CFA resources, plus our resources all coming to bear when and if, but when they do need them on this front. John was not. He does want to have a conversation. He does want to get rolling on this. But they were, when I spoke to him, they were getting ready to go into negotiations, contract negotiations, and one of his HR team was not being let in the country or had been quarantined or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think she went home and had some troubles when she came back with the COVID stuff. So he just did not have the bandwidth to move ahead on that. And then I've not chatted with John since that conversation, truthfully. So. But that's the status of where we're at with Alstom and that program. They're going to have a ton of money to spend between their own and the CFA, because the CFA was the OJT pot, and so they got a boatload of cash there.
How much do they get of CFA?
The number's escaping, but I want to guess it's right around $100,000. That number's coming to mind.
It's not a lot of money for 1 year. You got to train these people for a year to get them to become master welders, and it's a long process to get them started in. So that's not a lot of money at all. I mean, I'm just concerned that we're going to wind up with them saying, where's the help? I mean, I thought we were going to try to put together some program. Let's you and I talk about it later, Dan. Give me a call later.
We're going to have a meeting and probably have the training providers around the table, and John's going to have to give us an actual timeline or a start date or something, or at least a start month that they think they will want to roll on that, so we can recruit them. But
when are you going to have
we
that?
can. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Talk to Reese. I'll make a note to follow up with John.
If you guys can chat offline and then keep us posted. Obviously, what's happening in Alstom is important to all of us. So
okay.
Absolutely, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep. Were there questions in terms of kind of the recommendation to modify the budget and close out the year? Were there any shifts or non-shifts that made people nervous, or they had questions and wanted some additional clarity on?
Makes sense to me.
I don't know enough to question you.
If there are no other questions for Dan, can we get a motion to get it on the table for a vote?
Don't move.
Second.
Yeah.
Motion and second. Any more questions, concerns? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
So we'll go back here. OJT Cont issue. So I'm not going to name the name of the company just because I don't want that to impact anybody's thinking. But we've got so we worked with a company to set up. They were going through a bit of a growth phase, and we set up a bunch of OJTs with them. COVID, they started OJTs and then they had to let people go and then they brought them back, but they didn't let them go on Monday and bring it back on Thursday. There was a few week gap in there. It was, some of you may remember, a bit of a crazy time. So normally in a situation like that, when a company has to, the training plan that they have is not going to happen in the time lot that they thought. We just simply amend the contract to give them more time to do it, and it's pretty seamless. What we have is a bit of a structure challenge now, is that by the time the company's HR returned and they were able to kind of reconfirm the dates and the need, and Sue was let off on this date, but she's not coming back till that date, etc. By the time the extensions, the amendments were signed, it was after the initial contract expired. So you can't really extend a contract that's expired, and the date timelines have some gaps in there. We've done a little bit of research, and I'm no lawyer. I don't even play one on TV. You can, there's a couple of different ways to skin this cat. We can go back to that company and ask for money back because we've already paid them for it, because the contract's closed out in like August or September of last year, and so they've been paid. So when Rayanne's monitoring, she picked it up. That's just kind of how it came about. We can go back to that company. We can ask for those training dollars back from them. Another way to do it would be to, in what I've looked at, it appears to be in contract law that if the two parties agree even after the fact, as long as they incorporate the two documents in it, they can create a new master document, which includes those two other documents, and then you can kind of patch it up with that way. I am a little bit nervous on the front of I've never done something like that, so I don't know, what phrasing would need to be in there to make that type of document legal. And then I still do have a little bit of a aching whatever in the back of my mind that WIOA legislation and the OMB regs are going to question it a little bit. So I really need to engage a lawyer around, what would this document need to say and look like to create this bridging document, which ties it all together and brings us back into at least contract law legalities.
Dan,
so I've just mumbled a little bit. So that's what's going on. Go ahead.
I guess my larger concern, I agree from a contractual standpoint, but I agree with what you said last, which is my larger concern would be WIOA OMB issues and not, or DOL, not, having them have a negative finding against us. Is there any regs that speak to that, or can you reach out to NIATEP or anyone to see if anyone's ever faced this before? Because I guess I'd rather be first bulletproof on the regulation side before the contract side, because that stuff, there's wiggle room on the contract. There's not wiggle room on regulation.
Right.
Okay. So I've been a little bit hesitant to bring the normal chain of command on these types of things would be to go to our auditor, SOCNA and company at the Department of Labor and ask them to give an opinion. I've been a little bit hesitant because the minute they give an opinion, they become excruciatingly, painfully inflexible, and their opinion becomes the final. Whether they're right or wrong doesn't matter. They'll dig in their heels on it. So I've been a little bit hesitant to go down that road. NIATEP doesn't really delve into these too much, but they may be able to put me, if they've heard of any other areas doing something similar, I could ask them and then try and go to those areas. But I have not wanted to make a big public thing out of this yet, because I'm trying not to have a, draw in the DOL until I'm prepared to. And I know I'm recording this and this is going to get posted, so who the heck knows, but
how much money are you talking about?
I'm going to pull up my little sheet here. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about $10,000. Actually, you can see my spreadsheet now, so you know what company it is. But about $10,000.
Okay, thoughts from the group.
Dan, is there any way, is there any way that you can clear it up by getting the company to pay it back and then go forward with additional monies for them in this coming year, make up the difference? I mean, that's the cleanest way,
Correct.
from what you say, is to have them pay it back and it's over with, you know? I mean, and it's not it's not a lot of money, but I mean, it's something that we could make up with training going forward, I would think.
You're absolutely correct. It is the cleanest way, Jim. It is, and that is probably if DOL's first answer would be, without even thinking, would be, we'll just get the money back from them and then move forward.
Right.
10,000 is a lot of money to hit a company, and it is a well-known company, and we've had to pull back money one other time from another company, and we've never really fully recovered our relationship with that company. And this is a big company, and I hate to ruin that relationship. And that's kind of my hesitation on that front.
Would you ruin your relationship by explaining it to them and telling them, you know, we'll certainly make it up. We're sorry that the state regulations did this to us, but we want to maintain our relationship, and we'll work it out this coming year with training. I mean, you have the relationship.
I could certainly do that. I mean, if that's kind of why I'm here to this group, is I need the wisdom of the group as to how we want to move on this. I haven't had that conversation with them yet, and maybe 10,000 in the world, they're a big enough company. Maybe 10,000 wouldn't necessarily bother them that much, and I'm overthinking this. So
I would certainly try.
Have the conversation might be their idea.
Yeah. Since you're recording this and I can't see the spreadsheet, what company is it?
It's Hilliard.
Okay. I would agree with Jim. I think you have those conversations, and again, whether we all like it or not, there are regulations that we have to follow. There's a push and pull. We need to do this, and then we can move along on the other side. But yeah.
Bless you.
We've been pretty good with Hilliard, you know. I mean, I would think they would reciprocate.
Okay. I will go down that road, then I'll schedule some conversations and kind of explain the realities, and some of it truly is, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but I will tell you that we have a very long and storied exchange of emails trying to get them to close the loop on this amendment, and they dragged their feet for a long time. So it's not as though we accidentally went back in and rush at the back end. Kelly and the bin team they were on top, and they were sending email reminders, and the hesitation and really the delays in getting it done were coming from them. So yeah, I'll just go back and we'll have that conversation and see where it goes, and then we can. The next meeting I'll update you on where this stands.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Griffin, for your wise advice. I do appreciate it. ETPL updates, CCC, Central Service Technician. They'd like to have this put on our ETPL list. They are a SUNY college. It's very challenging for us to say no. It is lined up nicely with some of our demand occupations. This really is Central Service Tech is a kind of coverage for a person responsible for decontaminating, sterilizing, assembling, storing, and distributing medical devices. I didn't know it was Central Service Tech, so I found this very interesting when they brought it up. So that is what it is. The tuition cost is $1,300, so it's certainly well within our categories. Although you'd have to buy parking pass, I guess, with some lab fees. So cost is certainly in line. It is a SUNY institution. Corning is a trusted training provider. Staff recommendation is to definitely approve this ETPL. So I would request a motion to do so.
Well, you got it, then.
That sounds like Ernie's the first.
I'll second. I'll second it.
Okay. Motion second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
All right, thank you. So, accepting the PTE grant. This is really just quite simple. We were awarded the grant from Chemung County to continue our PTE program. I sent an announcement out on that. It's up to $350,000 a year. We have come under budget every single year for Chemung County on this front, and that's really why it's up to. And when we posted it, it was up to $350,000. So I would like an official motion to accept the grant funds and continue with that program.
Yeah, great job on that. Thank you. And we got a motion, and then did I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion second. Great job. Any questions, concerns? All aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
All right, business services report, contract values written. You've seen these before. So since July, we've initiated the following contracts. You can see them in here. Red designates that either through COVID or PPP or a person quit or they got fired, the contract did not actually close out. So we didn't actually spend those dollars that you see highlighted in red. This gives you an idea of where we are spending. We've been helping a couple of companies grow. FM Howell has really needed some help, although they've not been terribly successful. I take that back. I think FM Howell got a PPP fund, and so because that's federal money, we couldn't use federal money to offset federal money, and so them taking the PP means they didn't get our funds. TTA was in a hiring crunch for a push for a while, so we were able to help them out. John Mills, same thing. Finley Tall Timbers and Boss Security and Automation are our two biggest ones right now, although Mextra and EL Manufacturing have also done some. So you can kind of see where the monies have been going and whatnot. OJT, total OJTs at this point, about $87,000 worth of OJT money on that front, which for those of you that remember, CSS and days of yore, 87,000 a month's worth of OJTs. But in terms of our current past few years of flow, we're getting pretty close to a bumper year. Customized trainings, we've got a lot of those still going. You can see the different categories and companies. So Corning IDM canceled their initial, but then they came back later, COVID, and they've done another one. Actually, they just approached us. This was so successful, and their business in this unit is up. They'd like to initiate a second, and I've said to please go ahead and explore again at that $10,000 cap that we had that conversation before. We at this committee, so you can see where the monies are going. CISR, Excel out there, some leaderships, ICAR trainings. This is a big one here. Siemens Energy is the painted post plant is doing a lot of upskilling of their folks. They also could be looking at bringing on, as the Siemens over in Olean shuts down, they've offered up to, and they don't have exact numbers, but up to 150 of those folks, they've offered opportunities to go to the painted post plant. So whether they will or won't, I don't know. But they could see some growth and do some additional others. HP Hood. So we've spent about 103. As I've said, Corning IDM is another 10,000 coming in. So we've had some good stuff there. So that's our business services report. Questions, comments? With the board bump up, this goal will be now targeting, instead of 191, to close out the year, we'll be doing at least another close to $50,000 on this front as well. So the only thing you need to do there is kind of either, just kind of use this as a report to the full board when we do it, unless there's questions or angst.
Do you want a motion for that, Dan?
Just a motion to present it as a report to the board. Yes, please.
Okay.
I
All right,
recommend it to the board.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right. So as you know, I'll flash back there a minute. At this point in time, Finley's Tall Timber, we've been helping them. That's Southern Tier Logistics. So if it's not a wood company that we're necessarily working with, it's Ohio Logistics, Southern Tier Logistics, Finley's Tall Timbers. They're all the same company. We've helped them do quite a bit as they're looking to ramp up and grow their operations across their various facilities. We do not have a policy which says in any given year a business cannot exceed a certain dollar amount. What we have, as you'll remember, is around the $20,000 mark, we step back to the board and say, we've invested $20,000 this year in this company. Do we want to continue making some investments in them, or is budget such that we want to back off a little bit? So we're at that point with Finley's Tall Timbers where they've hit about $20,000. What I would say is my staff recommendation would be to continue working with them. We've provided some really good skill sets to those workers, but we've had a couple of other positive things going on. One, we've been working with that company and for a little bit this year, and we've really helped them solve some of their recruiting problems. They were paying next to nothing, and so they were on that employee retention hamster wheel, where you'd bring people in and you didn't pay them enough, but you worked them really hard, and then people just left and went somewhere else. So we've actually helped them go from about $14 an hour up to $16 an hour for starting OJT contracts. So we're helping them, and they're beginning to see those results in terms of the retention of their new employees. So I think our impact in working with them and whatnot has proved beneficial. 20,000 is 10 OJTs. That's really not a lot. I mean, actually, going to Jim's earlier comment about the 100,000 at Alstom, we've not invested a huge amount of money into them, and I think we've got budget room to close out the year with them. Plus, the types of skills that these folks are learning are forklift, warehouse, those types of operations. So they are very transferable in our marketplace. So CVS is a direct competitor with them, and the company that cannot be named in Bath will also be tapping into this skill set as well in the coming months. So it's very highly transferable. We've had some really good success with them in terms of moving their wages, helping them move their wages to a more market competitive level. And so staff recommendation would be to continue investing with them through now to June.
Dan, are you comfortable with this company? I mean, they're an Ohio company. And fairly new. I don't know much about them at all since they're here, but it's not a New York company, and not that has anything to do with the training part of it. But I don't know the company, and I rely on your evaluation of them or somebody else on the board to tell us how substantial they are, or what the future is for a company from Ohio.
Well, Griff,
I'll let other folks weigh in.
Yeah, Southern Tier Logistics, which was what it was called initially, has been in the area for quite a long time. They were originally based out of the holding point in Horseheads, and then they built that facility out there in Irwin, I think it is, isn't it, Dan?
Yep.
Probably, I would say over a decade ago. So they're pretty well set in the area. I guess my only concern, and Dan, you kind of answered my question with saying that that these guys are increasing their wages for their starter people, is dumping a bunch of money into a facility that is paying low wages. But it looks like you've addressed that already.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at last year's things and the beginning of this year, you see we had very little engagement with them on the OJT front for a good chunk of the beginning of the year. It was kind of that get to know you phase a little bit, but we were also kind of picking and choosing which ones we were going to help with OJT on because we'd heard some things, and we were kind of going to Jim's reference. We'd heard some things, and the hamster wheel and all that fun stuff. So we did it with them, some early ones, but we really were able to. Kelly was able to build enough of a rapport with them, and we've actually talked to one of their recruiting. They use a staffing agency also to support, so they go two different directions. So we've been working with both the staffing agency and Finley's to say, or Ohio or Southern Tier, whatever you want to call them, to say, this is not sustainable for us. It costs you money, but it's not sustainable for us. You really need to. And we've gone from 1425. So if you look at OJTs back up in this area of the world, up in here, They were like 14. Well, they were not like, they were 14.25 an hour. If you get down to these latest rounds of Finley's Tall Timbers in here, they're up to 16 an hour. So they've kind of listened to that, and we've provided them some labor market information. And so far, knock on wood, we've had good results with them. Our OJTs do seem to be sticking. I think we may have lost one of the early ones, but they seem to be sticking. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it if I was getting any pushback or hesitation, or I would recommend a pause or something like that. But at this point, I don't really have any reason to. There's nothing that's troubling right now with them.
What's their total employment? About, I mean,
Oh, they're over 200 for sure, I believe, especially between the different operations.
okay, Aaron, thank you.
And I think their biggest customer is Corning Incorporated. I think that's the transportation arm of Corning.
Okay.
So I just go ahead. I'm sorry, Jack.
No, I was going to kind of call the question what the pleasure of the committee is.
The question is do we allow them to go over the 20 grand?
Yes. Can I
For the
continue
year?
to between now and June 30th, get permission to go above the $20,000?
Do you have any idea or inkling on how far over the 20 grand they're going to go?
There's not a whole lot of time. There's only like 3 or 4 months left in the year. In terms of obligating, we could set a checkpoint at maybe like 30, 35 or 40, something like that, and then I could touch base back with you. But I mean, an average of 2,000. If we wanted to help them with 5 more employees, it'd be another 10. So we could do a check back in at 30,000.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I'd
can
be
we
com-
set a ceiling and then revisit it?
I agree.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with another 10 personally.
Wow, see.
And what I can do is I can come back with better information at that time as far as number of OJTs and where they're at, and I'll have a better data set spreadsheet for you to look at as well. And we'll also do follow up with retention on the earlier OJTs, so you can see how we're doing.
Okay. Is everyone, I guess, conceptually before we get a motion, okay with 10 grand? Up to, with a cap of 30 total?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion. Second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, so I'll let Kelly know that. Wellness program, just so you know, the staff have requested, and I was very surprised by this. They'd like to put together some company wellness programming, the traditional type of wellness program where you set exercise goals or weight loss goals or whatever. And there's a little small group that's kind of working on that. They'd be really excited on it. So I certainly have not dissuaded them from doing it. One of the things that they are asking is, could they set and would the board allow them to put up some like the top team that does their walking or whatever gets a $25 gift card or something along those lines. Would the board consider putting a small amount of money into type of incentives around this wellness programming that they put together? What I've shared to them is, one, A, I need to ask you on that if you're interested in doing that. And B, just so that you're aware, those types of incentives I do not believe are WIOA allowable. So we'd have to use some of our unrestricted dollars, our pop can money and different pools of money like that to pay for it. So if you were inclined to want to do it, I would set a fairly small dollar amount because we don't have a lot of unrestricted funds floating around, nor a huge way to generate them. So either A, the board can't afford to support it at this point, or B, yes, we would, but I wouldn't do more than realistically $100 a year. And even at 100, we're probably going to be looking for some pop can fundraising.
Yeah, I'd agree. So I'm comfortable with what the board wants to do. I have to bail. I'm at the site, so I apologize, but I'm obviously comfortable with whatever the board wants.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, walking is a form of travel, and that should be a travel expense then. Oh, will we be recorded? Oh. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, Dan, wherever you can squirrel that money away from.
Why don't you send each one of the board members a $10 bill?
There you go.
It's going to go into corporate or the company's wellness programming. So, all right. I think we could, if you wanted to do like maybe $50 from now till June, kind of finishing up for the year, and then, in Live's budget, we could, do $100 a year or something like that. I think that without impacting. That would be my recommendation if you want to do it. Maybe 50 between now and June, and then looking next year, maybe 100 for the year.
Okay. That's your discretion, I would think.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Hilliard's can sponsor it.
Yeah, right. I'm with you, Ernie.
Pull back $10,100.
Mhm.
So the last thing on here is the Corning Market Street lease. So many of you will remember the succession of places where the admin office lived, starting at 20 Denison to 65, was that East Main, to 8 Denison, and then now kind of we're at with 23 West. The reason we're at the 20th space we're at right now is because we had originally leased that location for a Corning Career Center. And then budgets crunched and we had to close it down. So because we weren't going to out that lease, we just went there and that became our home. That lease is up for renewal in February of the coming year. I've talked with staff and we're kind of the opinion that we really don't want to move again. Moving that many, we're still not getting all of our mail. I mean, that's just a little annoyance thing, and we still don't get some of our mail items. And UPS, or we get a stray DHS driver or whatever, and they'll leave it back at 65 or 8. So we really, the feeling of the team is we really don't want to move. That space is not necessarily ideal. It's probably a touch big for what we actually need, particularly with the amount of remote work that we're visioning moving forward. But what it does give us is a space to actually have like exec meetings. So, I mean, at some point in the not too distant future, the executive orders are going to have to be renewed or reviewed or whatever it is. And so us being able to even have a meeting this way is really only happens because of the executive orders. So when they go away, we're going to need a place to have exec meetings and so on and so forth. And Corning provides us that location. We can set up some tables and whatnot in there. But before I do this, before I begin that conversation around, do you want me to negotiate and try and, secure that space, or do you want us to move? I just need to take the temperature of the board on that.
Is there a renewal in the lease?
No, it was a 5-year, and there was a renewal in that, and then at the end of 5 years, we're going to need to negotiate a new lease from the ground up.
Let's go ahead and negotiate with them and bring it back to the board. Anybody else? I mean, that's what I would do.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just didn't know if you wanted us to shrink down and not really reside space, or try and find the cheapest space available, or I'd rather stay where we're at. I'd rather try and negotiate. I mean, if he plays hardball and whatnot and he wants to raise the rent, I'm really not looking. I'll be honest, I'm not looking at the rent going up because it's already a little bit more space than what we need. And he's having a hard time keeping that building full. So I think we're in a strong enough negotiating position that we should be able to maybe see a modest reduction or at least level it and hold it there for a while. So that's what I'm targeting.
I'm okay with that.
Good.
All right. So that's it for me. Go to the order. Otherwise, we can motion to adjourn and it's 8:57.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Tim. All in favor? Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right. Thanks, folks. Appreciate your help today.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Yeah.